Game boxes, they come in all kinds of variations. Where having a game stick or just an Android box, they slapped some Emulation on it. That is a piece of software you can download for free and have a retro emulation machine. However, when it comes to these devices, there are so many ones out there and it's absolutely nuts. But where all of them are actually coming from China, you do have the option now to buy a couple of them from Amazon. The first noticeable difference are the prices. For the first generation, they asking like say $80–90, where you can find them for at least 50% off on AliExpress without a sale. However, I think it's an interesting subject to check out, but we're going to be focusing on one particular model over here, and this is going to be the X5 Pro. And where this is coming or actually buying from Amazon, I think it's still one simple thing. Because it's a package from China, yeah! So today I wanted to do a chit chat about the X5 Pro, or this very strange looking Android box. So where I have a little bit of a double feeling with this, and that's with a simple reason. So first of all, this configuration is very strange. There is not, let's say, a built-in hard drive, we do have an external one. Where we have seen this before with Botocera setups, so this is not even one in an enclosure. This thing comes with a hard drive just as it is. These should normally be built in a PC whatsoever. So this is kind of strange. With mini PCs and Botocera, we have all kinds of very cheap solutions that can play thousands of games. And with this X5 Pro, we're still having the Android part. And the Android part, I wouldn't say it's super bad, but you know, there are a lot of limitations. And the limitations we don't have when it comes to other devices for Botocera and a mini PC. The configuration beside the hard drive looks kind of nice, and they're putting a lot of effort in it. But and again, if you're going to be paying, let's say, $200 or $300 for a device like this, we do have many options. And what do I mean with this? So we have all kinds of mini PC solutions that we can buy under $100. And if you're going to be looking above that, you're going to be having some very cool mini PCs that has some crazy overall emulation performance. And some of them, I can say, you have the option to play PlayStation 3, for example, that this Android device doesn't. So however, depending of course how much money you're going to be spending, but with $300, we do have a very big budget, and you can buy or build yourself a mini PC with a lot of emulation capabilities. But let's go back to the X5 Pro. So I'm having over here the 4TB version, so that's a lot of space, and I think it's going to be more than enough if you want to emulate all the way up to Sega Saturn, Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, let's put it that way. So the newer generations, because those ISO files take up a lot of space. So in here we're finding the Android remote, because it's actually an Android box, so if you want to watch some other, let's say, applications like YouTube, you can actually do that. However, I think it's a very cool add-on, but for me, it's all about the game emulation and what this thing can actually do for the money. So this is how the X5 Pro is going to be connected, and you can see it's going to be a massive cable nightmare, and man, what a Frankenstein situation we're having over here. So I'm hoping in the future they're going to be thinking about something to actually make it a little bit better. And yeah, particularly the hard drive. Come on, this looks really awful. I don't know if there are any closures for the SATA connection, because that's the problem. We're not using a normal USB 3.0. So configuration wise, this thing was kind of plug and play. I had some struggles with getting the hard drive to communicate with the device itself, because the tiny pins in the game box itself are very fragile, so you need to squeeze the connector in very well. Be careful you're not going to be bending anything, and if everything is right, you can just boot it up with the Pegasus software, because this is the front end you're using. Here you can see in the back end we have all kinds of different emulators that we're not going to be touching. We're going to be using the front end, because the front end is more like a collection, the Pegasus, and if you're going to be booting that up, normally you're not going to be getting this message. So, and this was the problem I'm talking about, that I hadn't the connection properly configured. However, after some wiggling and messing around, this is what you're getting. So what it actually does with the front end, when you're going to be clicking on it, will automatically boot up into the emulator and then the game. And you can go back fairly easy. So navigation, it's going to be super easy when it comes to that. So you can also have some application to automatically boot into the front end, so it can use this only as an, let's say, game box. So this thing is capable of running all kinds of different games. So yeah, they're having the latest systems. I really recommend using that. I think it's going to be great all the way up to PlayStation 1, and we do have the option for occasionally some Dreamcast, Sega Saturn, and a little bit of a PlayStation 2. But again, I think if you want to get into the PlayStation 2 and higher, and even do also upscaling, then you need to have like a very cool PC. So the package's front end does look nice, and they put a lot of effort in, and this is a very cool overall situation. But if you want to play some old school, let's say 8-bit, 16-bit games, handheld like Game Boy Color, I would not even recommend getting something like this, because you can do it the same thing with a way cheaper box. So that's one thing you need to take consideration. We also have GameCube and some other cool stuff we can do with it. But let's get him some gameplay and see what it actually can do. Let's say Android box called the X5 Pro comes with the new Rockchip 3588S. It's an ARM 4 Cortex A76 with a 4-core Cortex A55. The GPU is an ARM Mali G610 MP4, combination with the Android 12 operating system, 8GB of LPDDR4, internal storage of 65GB that we're not actually going to be using for the emulation part, Bluetooth connectivity of 5.0 and the Wi-Fi number 6. Starting off with some GoldenEye with the N64. For benchmark, I already noticed some weird things going on with some glitches. But let's boot it up and let's see how this game will actually run. But when it comes to the GoldenEye series, yeah, we do have an overall better emulation performance now with this newer chipset. It will not be perfect with every single game, but it's so much better than it has been with the first generation of Super Console Xboxes. But is it really worth buying such an expensive device? Yeah, that is of course debatable, because when you're looking at those, let's say, Battlesera mini PCs, we had amazing overall performance for way lesser money. Where's that guy? No idea. But so far, no weird thing going on. But when it comes to the overall emulation performance, you can just see that it stutters here and there, but the overall, let's say, performance, depending on what kind of game playing, seems to be working just fine. So let me check if I can even do something here. Yep, we can move because the touch is enabled. So let's see if we can get into the game. But it's quite unfortunate, so we need to figure out how to get this all working, how to get out of the game, because that is something we need to see if we can mess around with the settings. I find it quite unfortunate that all of these things have so many problems, even it's like missing out configurations. So we need to get into the menu somewhere and mess around with it. Now we need to figure out how exactly getting out of this freaking emulator. But I'm quite surprised to see. Let's play Tekken with some touch. There we go. Alright, so next up, let's take a close look at some PlayStation Portable. Pressing L2 will give us the option to make a quick load, quick save. There's no, oh man, there is no save, so I need to wait to the freaking annoying intro. It has been set to 1080p resolution, so let's see if they set it right. There's no frame skipping enabled. Okay, that looks interesting. Let's get them some gameplay. Alright, so far so good. God of War, PlayStation Portable, 1080p resolution or 4 times upscaling. That is absolutely not bad. So far so good. He's pulling the arrow. Oh, still just hitting 60 FPS. So I must say I'm quite surprised when you're looking at, let's say, the older boxes. They had so many issues. So this chip is absolutely not bad at all. So it's a PlayStation emulation. It's absolutely like enjoyable this way. And of course God of War is the most demanding one. So if you're going to be looking at some other games, we're just going to have even better. Maybe we can upscale it to a little bit higher overall resolutions. But so far, I'm quite satisfied with this. Looking at some GameCube performance, it seems to be working just fine. It's quite unfortunate that the input of the controls are completely messed up. When you even try to configure the controls, it doesn't work at all. So this is one of those things I was really afraid of with this particular device. The same with Windows and Hyperspin and all the shenanigans. That is why I'm a big fan of Emulation or Battlesera. It's such an unstable program with not like a lot of messing around with configuration. And if something is wrong, you can just easily, let's say, fix something. And that is absolutely a problem with this particular product. So when it comes to Wii emulation, there we're also having some overall good performance. Unfortunate, same input controls because it's using exactly the same emulator. But I just want to do a quick preview and maybe we can fix it in the future and see how it will manage. So an in-depth video will be fun to make in the near future. Okay, so let's check out some 3DS, and this seems to be working with the controls, but I can already see it hitting around 30 FPS and it stutters. So yeah, so that is not going to be an overall great experience. And there's also one of those systems that can be pushing this thing to the limit. Where 3DS is something I don't really test because I don't really enjoy it myself. I'd rather get myself a 3DS or get one out of my collection and just play the game as it is. But getting into the game, now I don't really notice it that much. Okay, starting off with some 55 frames per second, a lot of stuttering. Let's check out how the overall gameplay will be. It's absolutely so much better than the first generation of boxes. Oh boy, oh man, that doesn't run so stable, 51 FPS. But I can just hear how bad it runs. Oh man, I really hate this game. But it's absolutely great benchmark for this system. So Sega Dreamcast is a system that can be played on many cheap boxes too. Also with the cheap boxes, think about the S95 X3, X4. This runs absolutely great. Here we can maybe upscale it and slightly a little bit more than the normal boxes, but beside that, I wouldn't really recommend an expensive box like this for Sega Dreamcast because there are so many different ways to play it out. The performance seems to be sometimes dropping to 50-55, but getting into the gameplay, it seems to be working just fine with 60 FPS. No weird things going on. The X5 Pro is a very capable Android box that can play all kinds of cool stuff. However, I already mentioned in the beginning of this video that it does come with some limitations. The limitations that you don't sometimes have with those mini PCs with Bottle Era. And that is one of the things that you need to take consideration when you're actually picking something like this up. You do pay a lot of money, but is it actually worth it? Construction wise, this thing looks as a beast. Massive laser cooling, active fan, so that part, yeah, I'm very satisfied with it, so there was nothing wrong with that part. I really hate the external hard drive, I'm just going to be honest. That is the one thing I always will keep hating about it. So when it comes to this particular product, I cannot really recommend something like this, with a simple reason because you do pay a lot of money. And the overall, let's say performance, if you're going to be spending 300 on a mini PC with Bottle Era, that's going to be so much more significant and we can play way more and do a little bit of an upscaling and the overall experience is going to be better. Thank you all for watching, let me know in the comments what you think of the X5 Pro and it would be great to see you in the next video.